The easiest way to hear compression is on a transient-rich instrument, such as a drum kit. Let's compress this drum kit and alter the controls we've just covered to hear what effect they have. By lowering the threshold, we're affecting the point at which compression takes place. Lowering this line is telling the compressor to act upon quieter sounds as well as louder sounds. If I bring the line up towards 0 dB, it will only be affecting the loudest parts of the signal. Let's leave the threshold at -20 dB and alter the ratio. At the default ratio of 2:1, the compressor is going to reduce the peaks above the threshold by a ratio of 2:1. So if a signal breaches the threshold by 4 dB, the compressor will reduce that part of the signal and only output 2 dB. The compressor will effectively squash those 4 dB into the space of 2 dB. As I increase the ratio, the compressor will become more heavy-handed. You can hear it become far more aggressive, and it will reduce the peaks that breach the threshold by a larger amount. At a ratio of 6:1, if a signal breaches the threshold by 6 dB, the compressor will only output 1 dB, and will again effectively squash those 6 dB into the space of 1 dB at the output. Let's leave this ratio at 4:1 and move on to the attack. At the default setting of 20 milliseconds, the compressor will listen to the incoming signal and take 20 milliseconds to reach full compression, dictated by the threshold and ratio. If I increase this time to 200 milliseconds, it's now taking 200 milliseconds to achieve that full compression. You'll be able to see on the orange line that far less compression is taking place because the compressor is taking too long to react to the incoming signal. The transients of a drum kit happen far quicker than 200 milliseconds, so it's not able to be as effective. Neutron Pro has a useful feature where we can see how the waveform is going to change as we alter our compression parameters. It's called oscilloscope, and you can toggle the view here. Notice how as I adjust the attack time from fast to slow, we see more of the transient present at the start of the waveform. As the attack slows down, it allows more of the transient to pass, and this is reflected in the display. We can also hear how the kick's transient has more impact and sounds far punchier. If we bring the attack and release controls down, such that they are working very quickly on the kick, we get a completely different sound, and visually we can see how our settings are impacting the transient and sustain elements of the audio. This is a great way to quickly check if you're cutting off too much of the transient, if you're not quite sure. With the release at a default 100 milliseconds, the compressor is taking 100 milliseconds to allow the signal to return to normal after the threshold has been breached. A good way to think of this is how long the sound is going to be compressed for. With a very short release time, like 10 milliseconds, the compression will be released very quickly, with only the initial transient being reduced. With a longer release time of say 500 milliseconds, compression is occurring for far longer, and the compressor may not be able to release to no compression before the next hit occurs. We can adjust the knee to taste. If we feel it's sounding too heavy-handed, we can bring the knee up, which will result in a far smoother handling of transients. Or if we don't think it's aggressive enough, we can bring the knee value down. By bringing this mix control down to 50, we're bringing 50% of the original signal back in. This is going to give us back the uncompressed transients of the original audio, but retain the weight of the compressed sound. This can be a super handy technique when you want the best of both worlds. Think about a bass line and a kick drum. You may want to compress the bass line when a kick hits to allow the bottom end to come through without being clouded by the low frequencies of the bass.